We sat in the back of the coffee shop where she worked. It felt surreal, like I was in a dream I couldn't wake up from. Lauren Leave, as she now called herself, looked like a stranger, but I knew every twitch in her eye when she was nervous. I'd memorized her, after all. You weren't supposed to find me, she said again, her voice barely above a whisper. You left me, I replied, still stunned. You didn't just disappear, you erased yourself. Why? Her eyes welled up. I was drowning, Jake, for years. You just never saw it. I felt like she slapped me. I asked. I begged you to talk to me. I didn't want to talk, she snapped, then softened. I wanted to run. There was a long silence between us. She looked down at her hands, at the cheap ring that wasn't mine. I got pregnant, she said suddenly. Back then, just before I disappeared. I blinked. Wait, you were pregnant? She nodded slowly. I found out the day after your birthday. I was terrified, not of you, but of myself. I knew I couldn't be a mother, not the way I was feeling. I didn't even feel like a whole person anymore. I could barely breathe. So you just vanished. I wanted to tell you. But I thought if I stayed, I'd ruin everything. You deserved a wife who wasn't broken, a child who wasn't born from fear. She told me she'd gone west, stayed in motels, and slept in her car until she reached the Oregon coast. She got a job at a local cafe under the name Olivia Green, using her middle name and grandmother's maiden name. I didn't know what else to do, she said. I didn't want to give the baby up, but I couldn't go back, either. You let me think you were dead, I said, my voice cracking. She nodded, crying silently. I know, I thought you'd move on. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. Her pain was real, her trauma wasn't fake. But neither was mine. So who's the guy? I asked. The one in the photo. Mark. He doesn't know everything. What does he know? That I moved to Oregon to escape a toxic relationship. That my son's father didn't want him. I stared at her in disbelief. Do you even hear yourself? I couldn't tell him the truth by the time we got serious. It was too late. What about me, Lauren? What about my truth? She had no answer, just more tears. I left the cafe dazed, angry, confused, hollow. But I couldn't stop thinking about the boy in the photo, my son. The next day, I returned to town. I watched from afar as they walked along the beach, Lauren, Mark, and the little boy. He looked just like her, same round eyes, same crooked smile. But when he ran, he had my stride. I broke. I drove to a bar, got drunk for the first time in 2 years, and called Rachel my therapist. She's alive, I slurred. She has a kid, my kid. There was silence on the line. Then, come home, we'll talk through this. Don't make any rash decisions, but I couldn't leave, not yet. 3 days later, I waited outside Lauren's apartment. When she saw me, she froze. I need to meet him, I said. Please, I don't know. I'm his father, Lauren, you can't deny me that. She hesitated. He thinks Mark is his dad. I can't just blow up his world. But you blew up mine, didn't you? I snapped. She said nothing. Eventually, she nodded. Okay, but just once. No promises. We met at a park. I sat on a bench, watching as the boy played in the sandpit. He was 3, bright, curious, full of life. Lauren sat beside me. His name is River. River, that hit me like a wave. Beautiful, and I hadn't even been there to name him. He ran up to her, beaming. Mommy, look, a shell. Wow, she said, kissing his cheek. Why don't you show it to our friend here? River looked at me with wide eyes. Hi there, buddy, I said gently. That's a cool shell. He smiled and handed it to me. And that moment shattered me. Over the next week, we talked more. Lauren was different now, older, more guarded, but still the woman I once loved. She said Mark worked long hours and didn't know anything was happening. She didn't know what to do. I don't want to take River away, I told her. But I need to be in his life. He's mine too. You can't take that from me. She nodded. I know. I just don't know how to tell him. Then she dropped something I wasn't ready for. I'm pregnant again, she said, staring at her hands. My heart froze. Mark's, she nodded. I didn't say anything. What could I say? The woman I had mourned for 3 years had returned. But she wasn't mine anymore. I stayed longer than I intended. I needed closure, or at least, answers. But I hadn't counted on meeting him. Mark, he wasn't what I expected. He was calm, polite, even friendly. Lauren hadn't told him who I was yet, only that I was an old friend visiting from out of town. We shook hands. "Jake," I said. "Mark, you're the friend from New York, right?" I nodded. "Yeah, something like that." He glanced toward Lauren and River, who were laughing nearby. "Liv doesn't talk much about her past, just says it was complicated. But whatever it was, I'm glad she made it here." He meant it. I should have hated him, but I didn't. I hated the space he now filled. The role I'd been stripped of without a fight. He was raising my son, loving the woman I had vowed to grow old with. And now he was about to have a child with her. I couldn't breathe, but I smiled. "You're lucky, man. She's one of a kind." He smiled back. "I know." That night, I sat alone in my motel room and wrote Lauren a letter. Not because I wanted to guilt her, but because I needed to say what I couldn't in front of her face. "Lauren, you were the love of my life. I would have followed you anywhere if only you had let me. I know you were in pain. I know you were scared. But you took away something I can never get back. Time. 3 birthdays, 3 Christmases. 3 years of first words, first steps, first laughs. You took my son. And now you're building a new life, and I have to accept that. But I won't disappear, not because I want revenge, but because River deserves to know me not as a ghost, but as a father. I still love you. Maybe I always will. But love doesn't mean silence anymore. Jake." I left the letter in her mailbox. No text, no knock, just those words. When I drove away the next morning, I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew I had drawn a line in the sand.